One of the things about Africa, and I spend a lot of time there. COVID has me here. Usually I'm
Hmm.
half there, half here, half there. COVID has had me all here all the time, and what I can say is a lot of individuals always ask me when I'm in Africa, do they have food, and are there lions running around, and are there houses? There seems to be a real misconception about the continent, and I like to always say that everything that we have here I have there also. And so when we start speaking about Ethiopia, especially up in the Tigray region, that's where I have family, I have property, I have business, I have all of that stuff happening. And then right now, there's a great tragedy that's taking place. And before we get into that, I'm going to hit you all with this trigger alert. This is a show that triggers people because you've entered a free think zone. If you're not willing to be exposed to other points of view, tune out now and don't read the comments. You have been warned. Right now, Ethiopia is at war with itself. And I'd like for you to really explain it. You've been following it. You've got a lot more insight into what's going on. I'm looking at this Catholic News Agency article that just, the headline talks about hundreds reportedly dead after massacre at Oriental Orthodox Church in Ethiopia. And, it says at least 750 people are reported dead after an attack on that church in the Tigray region on January 9th. The European External Program with Africa reported that the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Oxum, about 80 miles, this whole Oxum area, and exactly what I'm talking about is exactly where I am all of the time. So it's interesting to see that inside a church, it's being reported that, the attack was carried out by Ethiopian government troops and Amhara militia from central Ethiopia, and at least 1,000 people were estimated to be hiding in the church at the time of the attack. Basically, it's saying that they were called out and shot right there in the plaza. This is being reported, and I don't see it being widespread news about any of this. Can you just give us an update in terms of what's going on with this war, what we should know, and then I've got more questions from there.
Thank you, Brother Jeff. Just like at the beginning of your statement, you just said in COVID, I know COVID has been very difficult to all of us around the world. I mean, since you say not all of us, but everybody's cannot travel to their loved ones and what have you. As you can see, the Ethiopia, the war, just before I talk about that, there is this kind of a notion, the division between the central government of Ethiopia, which was start leading by new prime minister for the past 3 years. Beyond that, there were another group, which is it used to be a political organization, where there were four of them together, and most of them predominantly in that leadership was from Tigray and political affiliate. So there is within the past 3 years, there's a little skirmish between those political groups, just like we have here, like Republican Democrat. So what I'm trying to say is that Tigrayans is only there's 6 million people, but the majority, as I said in my early point, I say there's about 110 million people in Ethiopia. So the central government is kind of trying to push its own political spectrum to different region of Ethiopia. There's nine region in Ethiopia. So all the 8 regions so far accepted the central government political agenda, except the Tigray region. They say they want their own. They wanted to continue in the previously. They also the upper hand of the political and the founding for the past 27 plus years. So they wanted to continue. They want to be left alone from the central government so-called special or non-special threat for the past 2 years. So those kind of word threat and becomes verbal threat and what have you, it was going back and forth. Both they use their own media. The central government also use their own media to kind of undermine, to kind of put in corner, and perhaps to use ethnic discriminatory language to the Tigrayan people. Uh, so they kind of mix up the political organization with the general public of the Tigrayan people by kind of degrading them the way the language they speak, and any criminal content using the national media as even in the political meetings, and trying to make the Tigrayan politicians are like kind of the bad doers for the past 27 years. Even the current prime minister himself was a part of their group in a political organization for the past 20 years. So to make it sure, the new prime minister did not like the Tigrayan politician, period. So he wants to try to take him out in any means, in any cost. So they use some kind of agenda to do all those kind of to rid of them by using all kind of for the past 2 years. But eventually, the Tigrayan government and the Tigrayan people felt they've been threatened by the central government. Even they are Ethiopians, so they felt they need to protect themselves. They need to protect their people. So they trying to use all kind of diplomatic way to kind of express themselves to the international community as well as to African Union. And there's a regional for the Horn of Africa that is called IGAD, which is a branch of the East African countries where they set together. So using all those remedy to kind of not to have any armed conflict, but without any conflict, it should be resolved, because these groups, they've been fought for within Ethiopia for 17 years, 30 years ago, and they took power, but now they are not part of the government. So there are only 6 million people. We're talking about the Tigrayan people.
But my question also is this, and again, we've got Ndele, our good friend and brother, KETO Radio, our partner affiliate, and I'm interested because you have the African Union right there in Ethiopia, and if the African Union and all the nations of Africa are right there in the backyard and they can't settle this, I mean, what hope do we have for them, handling, disagreements across the entire continent? I mean, the African Union is right there. I'm not hearing a lot about this war. A lot of folks that I'm talking to are not familiar with the war. I mean, what is it? Is this like something that the world is not supposed to be seen? And, and when things like this happen, this is when we have genocide. This is when we have atrocities, when folks turn away and people are silenced and, peacekeepers are not allowed to come in and see what's going on. What is the stand of the African Union that's right there in Ethiopia?
Yes, Brother Jeff, that was a good question. I think the African Union is trying to do its best, but the continent has its own a lot of problems all over the continent. Of course, African Union is challenged by the Nigerians, Boko Haram. There's a challenge in Democratic Republic Congo. There's a challenge between Cameroon. There's all kind of challenge all over the continent. At the same time, the whole world are facing the COVID at this time. So most meetings, most dialogue used to be in person in the capital city of Addis Ababa. But as you know now, most of them are virtual. To make things in the perspective, that's another problem. The other one is, of course, the diplomatic channel between most African leaders themselves. They're all dictators in their own country, and they do not really pay attention to their own citizen at the same time. So if the Ethiopian government do the same thing, so they will look at the other way. So that's my point of view. But in the meantime, the international community as well is right now is having its own problem. Their own citizens are faced with this epidemic challenge with COVID. So I think this is affect not only in Ethiopia, but there's a lot of countries that are taking place considered to be genocide. Ethiopia is not the only one currently, but like you said, African Union is in the capital city of Ethiopia, but most of those leaders are not really focused on into their own people themselves. So I cannot really depend on an African Union, because if it was that, there would be no civil war in the part of the Africans, like I just mentioned to you.
Well, it's very interesting. And again, we are powered by the people. Go to brotherjeff.com, make a donation of any amount. And for those of you who know anything about the work we're doing, we've got a initiative called No One Should Be Hungry, period. No one should be hungry, period. And for right now, we would like for you to go to brotherjeff.com or Cash App right there, or our great patrons, and make a donation. We are providing food. We're on the ground right now, making sure that food is being distributed in a lot of different ways. And I can tell you, this is not something that we're unfamiliar with. We're familiar with the territory. We're familiar with the people and the places, and we know that food is getting where it can. You can help. A lot of folks are asking what they can do to help. Today, we're asking you to go to Cash App. We've got some initiatives that are happening. And again, no one should be hungry, period. And so this is our international work that we're talking about right now. And Dele, just recently, and Barb asked this question about the Tigray region and what are some of the unique resources that are there. I remember hearing maybe a year ago that I don't think it was oil, but there was some precious kind of resource that was being discovered. And when I heard that, I was saying to myself, whenever you find some resources, those are often curses and blessings at the same time. How is the Tigray region sustained, and are there any resources, outside of perhaps coffee, et cetera, theft, et cetera? What are some of the resources that are there right now? And I do know water is a huge dynamic that's in play in Ethiopia, but in the Tigray region specifically, what are some of the resources that are there?
Yeah, just to come back to the resource before I say that, like you just mentioned, thank you very much for your thought, and also for all your support for all our community, for no one's supposed to be hungry message that you just mentioned. Before I said that answer, for the last more than almost 80 days or a couple months, the Tigray region, when the central government started the war on its own citizen, there is no internet. They cut off the internet. They cut off the water. They cut off the powers. They cut off the ground transportation, air transportation. Guess what? Those 6 million people cannot communicate with me, with you, or around the world, or their family, their loved ones, even internally. They've been displaced. Some of them, I'm close to 60 to 70,000 of them just flee to neighboring country, to Sudan. So hunger is not only a challenge in Ethiopia. We all know what happened in the early 80s. So the world know that. But at the same time, having said that, to come back to you about the Tigray resources, of course, just like any African countries, Ethiopia has so many resources, but it's not being utilized. Like I said earlier, I told you it was 85% of the Ethiopian commodity or anything that comes out is from the farm product. So Ethiopia has not been utilized its own resource yet. Even trying to build a dam right now, which is going to help the Ethiopian on the power source, is still dragging on. It has not been built yet. In the Tigray region, there is a resource, of course. There's the gold mine. Is one of the real important. Gold mine is a huge business in Tigray area, but at the same time, the region is also is an old nation. It has a tourism resource, which is it has a historical area. So I think tourism is one of the income to that region. But like I said, of course, farmers are a huge of players in that area. But as you know, the climate change and the world is facing with climate change. Tigray is not only alone. So there's a climate change. So I think there's a huge problem on that. On the water resource, of course, that's a difficult, challenging at the same time. So the people are living in a daily basis. So having this war this is not, the war did not come from the outsiders. It was launched by their own government or their own people. So it makes it even worse to have access or to utilize the resource they have. So I think it's a very difficult moment. Like you said earlier, the silence of the world is not because they want to be silent, but the situation that we're facing, and then the government of Ethiopia deliberately um, not allowing the international community, including United Nations. I mean, Ethiopia was a founding member of this organization, but the current prime minister does not get it how United Nations operate, denying them to access. I don't know why they're scared denying that area. There is 100,000 refugee came from neighboring from Eritrea. It used to stay in Ethiopia in Tigray region. They don't even have access to them to feed them, even to clothe them. They don't even know what happened to them for the past 2 months. Now today, the United Nations just came out. Half of the population of Tigray are out of food because of the government launch this war for the past 2 months. No access of transportation, no distribution of food. This is the time the harvest will be collected by the farmers, and they cannot do that. So they don't even have anything food for the next 6-7 months. So the government is deliberately trying to punish and harm the Tigrayan people. As I said earlier, we use genocide. This is a silent genocide. Of course, we know what genocide was take place in Rwanda in 1991 during Bill Clinton presidency. So now Joe Biden is in office, and see what they're going to do, or other part of the relay. Because if they're silent, after things get worse, it could be worse again. And that's my. I'm afraid that will happen, but I hope we're looking at in the positive way to our people and back home in Tigray.
Well, we did just usher in a new administration under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Do you have any hopes or feel for what this administration is willing to do or not do as it relates to Ethiopia? What is the U.S. foreign policy as it relates to Ethiopia?
That was a good question. The day before yesterday, there was a Senate hearing for the new incoming Secretary of State with the new administration with President Biden. He was very aware about the situation in Ethiopia. He did specifically address during his hearing what to do in the Horn of Africa, specifically the situation in Tigray. He said, I quote, it was alarming. So I think Senator Booker from New York was asking if there's any special envoy to be sent to the. So with the past administrator with Donald Trump, it was not really there was no engagement within Africa, including even the president didn't even visit Africa. So now he left office. So Biden has a huge experience during the Obama's administration. Even now, I think there's a hope that the new administration will take it seriously. And also there is a few leadership, and also there's a few assistants that would be able to give kind of the insight. There's some few people, yes, in the leadership that they talk about, not just specifically Ethiopia, but the whole continent as well.
Well, let me ask in terms of the food and food being used as a weapon of war. I believe that is against human rights, et cetera. And we're hearing about starvation. We're hearing about people, young people, and people in general just drinking out of the water, getting very ill, and the images that we're hearing about are alarming. What is the process when war crimes are being committed, genocide is taking place? What does the global community or the world community have at its disposal to reach in and to stop the starvation and the attack on, citizens and children and rape and all of these different things that we're hearing, what is the recourse, or do you feel as though the Tigray people are on their own?
Currently, of course, like I said, I mentioned to you earlier, I mean, the government Ethiopia said they have a right to do, or this is their internal problem, so they did not want any international help. But as we speak to you, and the ground is a totally different. It's a chaos. There's humanitarian disasters. There's of course should be investigation. There's a possible. There should be a definite war crime taking place with it for the last 2 months. At the same time, the government itself, he said, is going to feed its people. I mean, the government does not even have its own budget. This government is relying on international support within its own government function. The European Union, just like about a couple of weeks, just stopped their budget support to Ethiopian government because of this war taking place against their own citizen in Tigray region. So the Ethiopian government speaks like they're going to help their own people. They don't have any huge crisis. There's no starvation. They say so, but before even the war, almost half of the population in some rural areas are fed by international humanitarian within Ethiopia itself anyway. So having the war, it really makes it worse. So I cannot say what the Ethiopian government have to say when they say they're going to do it themselves. So the international community is begging right now. They want to help the Tigray people and other part of the Ethiopian region with any kind of medicine, food, and any kind of necessary needs for the humanitarian crisis. But the Ethiopian government refused, not only refused, did not even allow them to have access to visit in Tigray region is to evaluate what's going on. I don't know what they are trying to hide. And they said at the same time, the media or even local citizens to go and visit in that area, it's not even safe. So this kind of locked, the government seems to trying to hide, but at the same time trying to harm the Tigray people by deliberately, like we said, of course, international crime, using food as a weapon, and also for those who wants to flee that area by blocking them, not to flee to neighboring countries by blocking them. That's also is a crime and by international standard. So I think the Ethiopian government is already commit a war crime, but that has to be remain and judged in the future. But currently, the Tigrayan people, which is only, like I said, I'm going to repeat it again, 6 million people, half of them are in danger right now. They don't have no place to stay, no food, no communication. The whole general public of the Tigrayan people cannot communicate in the world, no phone, nothing. At the same time, they can't even go to their own bank, get their own money. The bank is closed for like 2 months. The government said it's open, but it's not functioning. At the same time, transportation is not safe. And then the local enforcement, the security, the government dismantled. So there's a lot of chaos. There's looting. There's looting not only within area, but from neighboring, from Eritrea. So I think the government not only just having a responsibility feeding its own people, but securing, but they have not done that also.
When we think about the U.S. and our educational system, and we're falling behind in the world. As a matter of fact, we're close to the bottom as it relates to education. Many folks in the U.S., they don't have a global lens in terms of what's happening around the world, and sometimes we don't know what's happening in our own backyard. We're sounding the alarm today, letting everyone know that genocide is taking place, starvation is taking place, looting and rape is taking place, and we're getting this from very credible sources, and the news is starting to pick up on that. I think that we just need to keep telling the stories and keep sharing the stories. Can you talk a little bit about the role of Eritrea and the Sudan, and then also the call for sanctions as it relates to their participation in the Tigray region and in the behaviors that I've just outlined.
Yes, thank you, brother Jeff. I think, like you said, America its own have its own educational system, just like anywhere in the world. But at the same time, I mean, of course, media is the one plays a huge role in this country, even in the education system. But sometimes the media now is engaged with the current situation, with the election, COVID. So during this time, so other countries in that part of the other side of the world taking advantage that to commit crimes or to do whatever they want, because the international community is focusing on the COVID and then the U.S. election or what have you, So that's another problem into it. And then to come back on the issue of sanctioning of the neighboring countries of Ethiopia, we can say Sudan. Sudan is a fragile, but now it has its own new leadership. As you know, Sudan has been in a roller coaster it has a huge its own problem for the past 20 plus years. There used to be even the peacekeepers, Ethiopian troops in Sudan, but now the Sudanese just kicked them out. They don't want the Ethiopian peacekeepers because now the Sudan seems the Ethiopian government is not a good neighbor to them. So the Sudanese are putting their troops next door to Ethiopian border because the Ethiopian government troops are invading their own land, but at the same time, so there is kind of skirmish between those two governments as I speak to you. When it comes to Eritrea, but let me go back to Sudan. Sudan has been very generous by accepting a lot of Ethiopian refugees during this Tigray war, during this Ethiopian government launching a war against honest people in Tigray region. So the folks who are the women, children, elderly, just name them, they flee from Tigray to neighboring to Sudan. Sudan so far accepted about 50,000 refugees as I speak to you. Eritrea is a different content. Eritrea has, presumably, there's a word coming out with special resources that the Eritreans are participating by killing the Tigrayans, which is they're not part of Ethiopia anymore. They are a sovereign country. They should not involve in Ethiopians any kind of political or internal conflict. But the Ethiopian government kind of gave a green light to Eritreans to do whatever they want. Even if they do anything, if they say anything, they not say anything to respond to them. So the Tigray leadership have said it. There's the Eritreans military involvement in a Tigray war between Ethiopia and the Tigray region government. Now, the Eritreans deny that, but there is satellite images. There is eyewitness. There is also a comeback who are being apprehended in the Tigray region. They are involved. Those who are part of the Eritrean government military, which is they are destroying a lot of historical places. They're destroying a lot of factories, including churches, like the Axum, the one the massacre just happened. So those are not. In order to investigate all this, the government of Ethiopia cannot send its own independent or international community, including me and you. I mean, any one of us. They did not allow us to go to Tigray to verify. So there is a lockdown on this. So it's hard to find which one is who's telling the truth. But we all know that there is a genocide committed in the Tigray region, period.
Well, when you think about that and you speak about journalism, there's been word that a prominent journalist was just gunned down, maybe a couple of them gunned down right at the United Nations. Or have you heard about the assassination of journalists, and then also what has been the treatment of those who are trying to or attempting to document this story.
That's true. These are journalists, not international journalists, but those are they presumed to be Tigrayans. So the Tigrayans journalists. So there is no journalist, international journalists. The Ethiopian government did not allow anyone to go to Tigray. I don't know where they're trying to hide, but there is journalists within Tigray. They are Tigrayans. So they don't want them. So they will find any means to assassinate them, the Ethiopian troops. There is a word. There's one journalist 3 days ago. He used to work in the capital city for Tigray TV, but since the central government treatment, he left the capital city of Ethiopia and he moved to the Tigray region. And he was working, but during the war, now they spot him somewhere. They just assassinate him. There's another gentleman, which is a journalist also. Now he's in prison. They put him to jail. So this is not just because they commit something or they can go to jail or they can be, they can have a process of in order to do part of the law. I mean, they did not put them to in the court of the law, but this is just randomly, purely assassination because they wanted to they don't want them to tell the truth, what they saw. So they're trying to do this to kind of silence them and to scare other journalists for not to say anything at the same time. So CPJ also came out with the statement 3 months ago about this Dawit, one of the journalists was assassinated. So having they say this, is still the international community, like you said earlier, does not know what the real picture. We all know because I'm part of the region. I'm from Ethiopia, and I have family all over Ethiopia. So we know, we follow through. Guess what? Just on Tigray region and Walaga, those are two regions that those family, they cannot access their family because we can't call a phone. I mean, 2 months. Can you imagine? You don't have no phone, internet, power source, transportation, food for almost 80 days. I mean, the government is deliberately doing this not just to harm the Tigrayan people, but trying to eliminate them from the tribe, from the Tigray region for life. So this is only, like, I'm going to repeat this. There are only 6 million people. Half of the population currently does not have any means of resource to survive, and the international community is sleeping and does not know what to do because the government of Ethiopia is blocking for them to come to help Tigray region, but Ethiopian government is not willing to give them access to that region, but it's given access to Eritrean troops to go wander around and killing anybody, raping Tigrayan women and children, and looting anything they can get, and destroying any part of the history of the Tigray area, including our churches, which has been there centuries and centuries. So this is a very alarming. But I don't want to sound like political biased, but I'm just telling the truth based on what I know and based on what I got the sources. But at the same time, our community, of course, may not know or know. It's kind of hard for some people. I know they're so generous to help. And we have seen it, Brother Jeff. I know, man, you have done this 20 plus, 30 plus years when we were young. We supported our brothers and sisters back in Africa. This is not a new thing, but at the same time, but this is horrific. It's worse than what happened in Rwanda in 1991. This is just a silent genocide.
Well, when you talk about, the Ethiopian government, from what I understand, it was a federation. You opened and you pointed out that there are a lot of different ethnicities and cultures all in one land. And from what I understand is there were representatives from many of those cultures that formed a government. And what I think now is there was supposed to be an election, when we're starting to talk about democracy, there was supposed to be an election because the prime minister or the leader right now was not elected, but was appointed. And at the time where elections were to come about, they were canceled because of COVID, but then at the same time, a war was waged during COVID. So what is the status of democracy in Ethiopia at this time?
Well, I can say that to you. Like I said, we're all trying to say based on what we hear and what we know in the ground. As you know, democracy not only in Ethiopia but the whole continent is still, it has a long way to achieve that. I think I can speak to maybe Ghana is doing great, but when it comes to Ethiopia, like you said, yeah, the government is formed with its 9 region, but Ethiopia has about more than 80 different ethnic groups who speak different language, but all those groups are in that 9 region form a federal government. So from those out of 9 of region, Tigray is one of the region. So the rest, the 8 region, they have their own problem also, but the government trying to launch a war on the 6 million people. Other region also have the same problem, but did not wage a war on them because they can just go there, anything, they can do whatever they want, but on Tigray region, they cannot do so. So the people there, they're very strong, they kind of unite, and they can, they're not really put themselves in the way what the central government, whatever, in the government system. So when the Ethiopian government, the central government council, like you said, cancel the election for this year, say they make an excuse on COVID, but the Tigray region, from 9 out of the one of the region, which is the Tigray, they say no, we will pursue our election because the Ethiopian constitution does not say to continue without any election. So we will not have no mandate after 5 years. So they say they want to continue to have their own election. The central government said no, you cannot have your own election. If you do, we'll come after you, or what? They trying to have a verbal threat. This war has not just started overnight. There were a sign of a war from the central government. There was a lot of verbal threat to the Tigray people in the Tigray region, and including to Walaga and the Oromo region. So when they cancel the election, they also put some figures of they can be a challenge to the future election. They put them to jail. They make an excuse. You incite violence, or you incite this and that. Even you incite a riot. They make an excuse, or you cannot have Addis Ababa, or there's some group. They're small. They don't even have no political arm or anything, like Skinder Naga and other people. I'm not even affiliated to the idea, but they just been put them to jail for no reason, because when the election comes up, there will be a challenge. So they put all these people, but the Tigray, they were a strong challenge, so they have to use a war in order to go after them, to assassinate them. In the past 1 month, they have assassinated more than 22 of high leadership of the Tigray leadership, or some of them which they retired. They used to be in the high level, and some of them who are a stronger leadership. They just hunt them down and assassinate them with no further ado of any court of law or what have you. They just assassinate them. Some of them they ambush them in their own home. Some of them they just kill them right there. Now they start killing the journalists. Now the army start using any means to terrorize the people, including rape. So election is just a luxury right now for Ethiopia. It's not a time for election to talk about in terms of the safety and the security, and also for the general public as well.
From what I understand, what is taking place with the Tigray region, the Oromo have been going through as well. Like, they're not unfamiliar with what's taking place. But I was looking at this attack on the church that we're very familiar with, and that we've been inside of that church, and we know the area. And to just think that individuals that are seeking sanctuary in a church can be lined up outside right there in the plaza and gunned down would seem to be cause enough for the world to turn its attention on what's happening in the Tigray region. Talk to me about the Amhara. Like it says in this article that, you know, the Ethiopian government in conjunction with the Amhara were participating in this. What do the Amhara get out of it? Like, I don't understand I don't understand the alliance, you know, and the attack on self-determination. Like, isn't Ethiopia established on the principle of self-determination? Like, you know, isn't that, like, when I think about Ethiopia, I think about self-determination. And so to try and rein in a people and to constrain their identity and try and morph it into like this one Ethiopia when there are many Ethiopians, I don't know how anyone thinks that's going to work. But can you talk about, you know, the role of the Amhara and the relationship, you know, between the Tigray people, so we can kind of get our minds around that also?
Yes, just even also to kind of clear up to our listeners and our audience, when we say Amhara or Tigray, which means it's just like saying here in this country, like we are from, like I'm black, you know, there's you know, Caucasian or white or Latino, or, you know, that's what we're talking about. So in Ethiopia, each ethnic group have its own names. So the Tigrayans are like one of the ethnic group. Amhara is also, and then we have also about close to 80 of them total. But the majority of them are the Oromo are the majority. They have a large population. They're also marginalized population, not just with this current government, but for many years. So the Amhara group of, I just wanted to be correct, Brother Jeff, when we talk about the Amhara people and the Amhara leadership, is kind of totally different. Because the people are very generous, Tigray people also, the Oromo people, but some, the Amhara elite and the Amhara affiliate, just like here, I mean, like you know, what happened in the capital like 2 weeks ago. You know, not all white people are like that. You know what I mean? But there is a group of who are really that sense or practice racism within their own Ethiopian population. So when we talk about the Amhara people, those are not the people in the ground, but the leadership. So we have to differentiate. Not all Amhara people are like that. But so the Prime Minister of Ethiopia took advantage of that when he said he's going to go after who commit crimes in Tigray, sending federal troops. But I don't know, like you said, why he also sent one region, Amhara troops, which is their own local police and law enforcement, together with the federal Ethiopian army to go after Tigrayans, because it seems to that the two neighbor ethnic to kind of have a long-term conflict. So this was not a good move within the Tigrayan people. They were shocked that their own neighboring Amhara people will attack them like that. When I say that, not all Amhara people, but they were ambushed, they were being massacred, they were being killed. Now, they go around and say, hey, not the Amhara people did, the Tigrayan did this to us. So they were no butterfly, there were no any kind of neutral person there to kind of tell us what's going on in the ground, but the government kind of pursued to use this ethnic bashing between the Tigrayans and the Amhara. So they took advantage of that by taking neighboring Amhara troops with them in order to achieve their war in Tigrayan people. So in the long term, I hope the Tigrayan people and the Amhara people live side by side, but I doubt it in this time of what we know in the ground in Tigray and what happened to the Tigrayan people with some few Amhara militant group. It is a heartbreaking. Some of them commit the crime, so they both vice versa are accusing each other. But of course, independent in the future, those things will be found out. So we don't want no ethnic conflict each other in the future. So I hope that will not happen. But the government took advantage of that, and the whole responsibility of the Ethiopian government.
That's what we always see, is that the those in power take advantage of those who are, with them in terms of the masses. Usually the masses are getting poor representation, from the top. And, that's just an example of how it's said that Ethiopia, colonized and did things to indigenous Africans to build empire. So with that being said, we want to continue to tell the stories, and we want to also make sure that we have resources that are being sent, financial resources. If you're willing to, Cash App is the easiest way right now to be of assistance, and we know how to get those financial resources directly to where they need to go. We don't believe anyone should be hungry, period. And we want to make sure, regardless of what's taking place, food is not being used as a weapon of war, because that's against humanity. That's a war crime. And I believe all of that will be addressed. Just before we go, and again, I want to say thank you to Ndele, KETO, our partner station, and in keeping these stories alive. I understand that there's a threat on young boys. Like, young boys are being targeted, shot, murdered, because it's being said that they would grow up to seek revenge. What have you heard in terms of the treatment of just this shoot on sight murdering of young boys?
That's true, because the Tigrayans have a history of youngs are being united and kind of trying to stand up and maybe even start armed struggle in the past. So they have this experience to challenge that. So I think they are trying to use terrorize the youngsters. Of course, they do to women. They commit sexual violence in any way, any kind of form, shape. Not to the young people. I mean, they go to houses. The Ethiopian military, so-called, trying to pursue on law and order, but when it comes to in the ground, that's not the case. So the youngsters are being hunted. They've been hunted down by the military. Some of them lost their life right on the spot. Some of them they don't know what they've been taken. So I think some of them, they, not only the young one, but even the older one, the elderly one, they try to constantly take their arms. They take their weapons away from them. So they want them to take armed struggle in the future. But having said that, like you say, Brother Jeff, just to make this point together, and the last point, I think every our listeners, of course, also your awesome viewers and on your platform can reach out our local officials to kind of speak out to the African brothers and sisters, especially what's going on, what happened to Ethiopia. It is very alarming. Of course, the American media it's not the American media's fault. It's the Ethiopian government's fault, because it's not allowing the international media to come and verify. So I think our elected officials can also pursue and ask questions into a legitimate government in Tigray, at the same time to the international body. Of course, United States also supports the Ethiopian daily operation, including the government. They're the one who supports some intelligence and military, because of this so-called war on terrorism. So I think America has a responsibility to ask questions what's going on, what happened to the Tigrayan people, why the Ethiopian government is still launching invisible war, and at the same time launching this food as a weapon. So I think all our brothers and sisters who view your platform and who listens this conversation that we're doing, and I'm appealing to them to reach out to their own local officials to address this issue and to say their concerns. And then if they have any support, like you said, I mean, they can reach out to you and what have you. And that's all I have to say. But I thank you so much, Brother Jeff, for allowing me to put my thoughts. And anything I say is just as my own personal thought and not against of anyone in my own country or here or whatsoever. But if anyone wants to reach out and talk to me also, and I'm also willing to do the same again.
Well,
Thank you.
I certainly appreciate the information. You know, I'm always sending lots of loves and hugs to my wife and family and all of our loved ones we know, touch, and want to see again. Ethiopia and the continent is precious. Our people are precious, and we need to treat each other as such. Ndele, before you get out of here, I'd like for you to tell individuals about the hashtag. I know that there's a hashtag and a way to tell stories, support. If people want to follow what's happening, you know, with this war in Ethiopia, what are some different outlets that you can recommend that people can get more information? Where do we go for information? And we do know that there's an awesome team on the ground right now that's compiling stories, putting out information. It's happening that a lot of people are becoming more and more aware of this. But again, Ndele, what is the hashtag? And then also, what are ways to connect and tell stories if, in fact, you have them?
Thank you, Brother Jeff. I mean, there's a local stop the genocide in Tigray. There's all kind of movement are going on here in the United States and other part of the world, in Australia and Europe and what have you. So there is a group in each local Ethiopian Tigrayan community. There is I mean, and also on the Twitter, there's a campaign that to aware about what's going on, genocide. So I think just to make it short, you know, Tigray genocide or stop war in Tigray is those are two words that triggers most the information that you can find in any platform that you can use in social media or in any platform. So those are words that I can mention to you just to for our newcomers, listeners like your audience, if they don't know anything about it.
Okay, I'm seeing those hashtags. Hashtag Tigray genocide. Hashtag Biden take action. Hashtag stop war on Tigray. These are
That's the one.
several hashtag Tigray can't wait. So hashtag stop war on Tigray. So as you're seeing these hashtags and as you're seeing these voices, you can also go to my wife's page, Malete Brahana Moscow. You'll be definitely plugged in to information. Ndele, thank you for being the voice. I've been watching you share this story from the onset. Can you talk a little bit before? I mean, I've got a lot of questions, and so we're going to keep coming back and keep highlighting this story. Again, everybody, go to brotherjeff.com, make a donation of any amount, go to Cash App. We're going to make sure that we're sending financial resources, and we want everyone to take part in that. That's one thing we can do. Another thing we can do is share the story. Can you talk about travel? You know, I'm a big fan of Ethiopian Airlines. You know, when we travel, sometimes we would consider other airlines, and I would tell my wife we got to go Ethiopian Airlines, and I know that is a government, airline. With that being said, with the problem between the government and the Tigray region, how are people traveling into Tigray? Like, how do people, is it just blockaded, barricaded out? Is there an opportunity to travel into Tigray right now via Ethiopian Airlines or no?
Well, to make the answer short is no, because it's still considered to be a war zone. Even the government declared flight can resume, so it has not happened for the past 2 months during the war. So there was no flight zone. So, like I said, the general public in Tigray, they don't have no means of accessing the world. If anybody in the locally to travel back and forth, they maybe have to pay a high sum money to travel on the ground, and that's also very difficult. And at the same time, it's unsafe for anyone to do so. That means you can be killed in any way, form of that because of the safety concern. And also, if you are original or targeted as a ethnic of to being as a Tigray, you're gonna be suspect of a challenge for the government. So your means of you to be apprehended or to be killed is just a prominent way of that I'm going to say it. Your chances of getting killed in movement is higher than. So that's why there's no aviation transportation in Tigray as I speak to you.
Well, I could tell you, Ndele, you and I spent a lot of time boycotting South Africa, and that turned out to be very effective as a strategy. I'm pretty sure my wife and I and our family will not be traveling Ethiopian Airlines. I don't see it. I believe that, folks from the Tigray have been targeted, fired, let go, etc. But what role will boycotts play in all of this? What can people do in terms of boycotting while they're waiting for these governments to come in and take action? What do you think about general boycotts? And then, by the way, I want to hit everybody before we get out of here with another set of hashtags. Hashtag Stop War on Tigray, hashtag Tigray Genocide, hashtag Stop Starving Tigray, hashtag Biden Take Action, hashtag Tigray Can't Wait, hashtag Tigray Can't Breathe, hashtag UNSCA Act Now, hashtag Eritrea Out of Tigray. Those are several hashtags that are right now available. If you want more information, the information is getting out there. Individuals are out documenting the stories. They're telling the stories. There's a counter narrative also in Delhi that none of this is really happening. This is just a narrative out of individuals' imaginations. And I believe political leaders and people in positions of power are being told that there's nothing to see here. In Delhi, one more time, can you address that argument that what we've talked about and discussed today is not really taking place? People are not being starved. Women are not being raped. Young men are not being shot down. People are not seeking sanctuary inside of churches and then taking out into the plaza and gunned down. Places are not being looted. What do you say to those who say that everything we're talking about in Delhi is absolutely not true? And why would we be making something up like this?
Well, Brother Jeff, I'm glad you bring that point. I mean, you're more aware of that. So I think that notion comes not from our American people or for those non-Ethiopians. This comes within Ethiopian people. I'm going to say it really upfront because they consider, they think the government is taking place in Ethiopia is justified. So they think the Ethiopian government have a legitimate right to go after on the Tigray leadership if they pursue some criminal act, but that no one challenging that. If anyone who commit crime should face the consequences, but the way you carry out the justice, how you address those criminals, that so they call them criminals, but the way the government pursue it was not to apprehend those, they call them they commit crimes, but the notion how they use the war to eliminate those who are, they call them criminals, but including the general public of Tigrayans. So this is what we are saying is happening. Those who are support the current government of Ethiopians are the one who believe Does nothing exist, and just the government is taking their daily jobs by pursuing under law and order. But the pictures does not say that, because you cannot have a refugee or fleeing from their country if you're trying to do a law and order. You may not have communication cut off. You cannot have international community come and visit you. That Tigray region, I mean, Brother Jeff, you've been there many times. There's a lot of tourists. I mean, why do you have to eliminate some of those international people not to come to Tigray, even if you think you are pursuing a law and order, but you're actually pursuing a real war? This is like a war without the people to defend themselves. Of the Tigray people are being massacred. They cannot even defend themselves because of the Ethiopian army magnitude. They use drone. They use MiG. Can you believe trying to apprehend 20, maybe 50 leadership in the government of Tigray? They send in Russia-made MiG jets, MiG-23, 29, Apache helicopters, G-11 trucks from China, which is it changed like a bridge, you know what I mean? Because of the Tigray region is like mountain area, so they use all kind of military resources to destabilize that area, including to commit a crime. So I cannot say there's nobody will say or say, hey, there's nothing existing in that area. That's blatantly, I would say it is racially motivated or hatred to Tigray people.
Well, I could tell you, in Delhi, anybody who would like to tell me that none of this is occurring, I just like to remind you, I live here and I live there. My wife lives here and we live there. My children live here and we live there. So if anybody believes that this is not taking place, and we are talking to family members, and, you know, we're in communication and we're looking to see, you know, who's alive and who is not, and not having access to, you know, basic communication with family members and friends and property and investments and all of those different things. If nothing is happening, then why not let everybody walk in and see nothing is happening? Like, if nothing is happening, why not join me? And we'll take a trip. We'll go, we'll go to Adwa, you know, we'll head up into Aksum. We'll go up into Rama. We'll go, you know, over into Dir Dawa, you know, we'll go into Mekhala. We'll go all of these different places. And, you know, if nothing is happening, then we should be able to walk freely and enjoy life with one another, because nothing is happening. Because we can't do any of that, that would tell me and others that something is happening, something is wrong. And I know something is wrong, you know, but a lot of folks are able to look at this from a distant point of view. You know what I mean? It's kind of abstract. It's kind of like something is happening over there. But if you can imagine the places that you love, and the people you love, and the people you see and talk to all the time, you don't have any access to them, then it's going to be hard to put yourself in a sense of urgency. And we are in a sense of urgency. There's a genocide that is taking place. People are being starved. Women are being raped. Young people are being shot. And we need the world to know this. And we'll keep beating that drum in Delhi. We'll keep saying it. We'll keep sharing it until more and more people start to hear what's taking place. And again, no one should be hungry, period. But then again, no one should have to live with the fear of being attacked by their own government, their own people, etc. So with that being said, in Delhi, we got to stay on top of this. We've got to, you know, keep saying it, even though folks want to be silent. And I always appreciate you, because you've been saying it for a long time. You know, you're a legend in this communication world, and you've done it so well that, you know, you've created institutions that get the word out. And I can't say enough about you. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we sign off? And I'd really like for you to talk about your vision for Ethiopia moving forward. Like, what is your vision? What is our hope? What are we striving for? What are we fighting for? What are we loving for? And what will we leave for our children and generations to come?
Thank you, Brother Jeff, and thanks for the kind and great words. Of course, me and you will go back on old generations to we grew up together, and I appreciate you. Thanks all your support, and thank you for me to be to be here. And I know you have been very supportive, so and I thank you so much, including your family. At the same time, of course, the future lays on. It is very difficult to say, but there is always a hope for everything. And of course, as you know, black is beautiful. So we need to live in the beautiful places, like Ethiopia. We want a peaceful and prosperous country. Everybody should respect each other and live side by side. Just like you mentioned earlier, I mean, every region place you go to, you have different food, different custom clothes, different religion ceremony. I mean, they enjoy it during the holidays and everything. But this past holidays has been very kind of a shadow a moment to some of them because of what happened to Ethiopia. So I think peaceful Ethiopia is what I'm hoping in the future. But when it comes to specifically in Tigray region, I think I'll pray for that region, including other part of Ethiopia, to come back in a sense of human beings can live in peaceful and happily, and to pursue whatever they want it to be and who they want to be and who they want to live with. And as I'm saying, like in the country in the future, just like you mentioned earlier, this is like to not to separate from Ethiopia, but to live in the dignity in their own part of the neighborhood. So the Tigray should be respected for who they are. The Oromo people should be respected for who they are, including Amhara and others. Everybody should be respected, and then hopefully things could be in the positive, and then we'll be once again the world peaceful community. Right now, Ethiopia is not a world peaceful community, as we say, because it took its own arm with its own citizen committing genocide. So I'll pray to have a peaceful end, just like did not expect South Africa will be in that situation when our brothers and sisters, when they were massacred, some of them were killed on the street of, in South Africa. But now Nelson Mandela came out, become a president after 27 years incarceration, and look what South Africa is facing now. Nothing. There's nowhere specifically, but even if they have a challenge. So I'm hoping the same way, the white South African was treating the black South Africans, but now the Ethiopians, those who are non-Tigrayans treating the Tigrayan people, should stop what they treat in the way and to pursue peaceful and respect one another and not to antagonize. Just because even if I say something that they did not like, or they trying to categorize you in a certain political affiliation because of what you're trying to defend. Even speaking out to Tigrayan people, you don't have to be Tigrayan to do so. You can be any human being to bring out the massacre and the horrible situation taking place as we speak. So my hope is we should not repeat this. We should be thankful to God, so our children to walk freely in Tigray or any, like you said, Dorado, Addis Ababa, any part of Ethiopia, including the whole continent. So that's my hope. I hope our children will be happy and safe in the future to walk in any part of region of Ethiopia, so they don't have to be discriminated because of their background of ethnic, and they should be even get killed or even rape or what have you. So this is my hope: peaceful and respect each other. And this is my last word. But other than that, I'm getting old, so I'm just leaving it to my children. Hopefully, they will come up with the positive and open-minded, just like we raise our children in this country.
Well,
Thank you, Brother Jeff.
It's up to us to make sure that the children have a society that they can live in peace, and they will stand on our shoulders. And we want to do the type of work that will leave a legacy, and they will honor us as we become ancestors. Again,
Yep.
what I want you all to really do is to study what's happening in Ethiopia, particularly in Tigray. There's a Washington Post article. Unfortunately, I can't read it because you need a subscription, and I'm attempting to pull it up, but it says extreme, and then I've got this splash page where I can't see exactly everything that it's saying, but it talks about, the hunger and the story. It's in the Washington Post. Just kind of Google it, and if you have a subscription or if you're able to, share that in some way, shape, or form, that would be great. I can't pull that up right now, but I can, again, pull up the article where it shows that at least 750 people are reported dead after an attack on an Oriental Orthodox church in Ethiopia's Tigray region. And if anybody familiar with the history will know that all of those Abrahamic religions have their roots right there in Ethiopia: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I can tell you that the church we're talking about, we've stood in front of, we went in, we've been inside the mosque that was destroyed. My wife and I, we stood there with family and saw that, the mosques when they were being restored. People who don't understand about Prophet Muhammad, alayhi wasalam, peace be upon him, when he was being persecuted in Mecca, and he fled to Medina, the first place he was instructed his followers to go was into Ethiopia. And so it was because it was Ethiopia that had the righteous rulers and kings and faith leaders that would protect the difference between other people. That was a place where folks could find humanity. It's my hope that Ethiopia would continue that tradition and allow humanity to flourish, rights to be observed, and humanity to be expressed in a way that the rest of the world would look at and say, we want to be just like that. That's what humanity looks like. That's what human rights looks like. That's what honesty looks like. That's what sharing and caring looks like. That's what Ethiopia represents. And that's what I pray and hope we get back to. Again, follow those hashtags. Ndele and I, we will stay on top of this. If no one tells the story, and many are telling the story, we will continue to tell these stories. Hashtag stop the genocide in Tigray, etc. Ndele, thank you very much. And everybody that's going through these difficult times, just know in the intense darkness, the brightest stars begin to shine, and truth will always outshine falsehood. All right, there you have it. Again, if you want to participate, if you want to donate, if you want to help, there are several ways to do that, and we know how to get those finances right to where they need to be. We do know exactly how that happens, and I'm looking forward to each and every one of you joining us in Adwa. Adwa was the beacon of independence for all of oppressed people and Africa. Join us in Adwa. Join us in Dir Dawa. Join us in, Addis Ababa. Join us, in Rama and Aksum and, Harar. Like it, Lalibela. Like all of the different places we've got to take the world to Ndele and show them the beauty of the motherland.
And also there's a castle in Gondar. The place you've been. So I mean, there's awesome things that like we can share, like you said. But without the past history that we are proud of, we can now create a new history in the future. So I think we need to respect and prosper what we have, but at the same time, we need to create a positive history. So we don't want it to be on the wrong side of the history, and we need to support, we need to help out each other. But at the same time, we don't want a horrible, dark history, just like any country that's had, including the United States. I mean, there's a slavery, and this country has a dark history, but it becomes a long way to come out. And so we live here with brothers and sisters, African Americans. They sacrifice in order for us immigrants to live in this country. So I appreciate that at the same time. But in the meantime, the African continent history legacy also can pursue in the future to our generation to come. So that's my thought. And This is my 2 cents of thought. Just teach your children in the way they should be proud who they are, and black is beautiful.
Black is beautiful. I love black people, and if you love,
Next time I come, I'm going to steal that shirt.
Yeah,
so
you can have that.
You better watch out.
Shirt. Again, everybody help me convince my wife. I want to build a house in Mekala, but we'll figure that out. But with that being said, we already got stuff in Aksum and Rama and all that. But in Adwa, but I want to. Hey, in Delhi, I want a house in Mekala.
I think if there's, you'll be surprised, if within next 2-3 years, with this, Tigray is being popular all over the world with these things anyway. Now with this horrible happened, what the government done to them, but I think there's a bright future in the future. Look at you. Your brother. I know you more than 30 years, and I know what kind of heart and how you grew up in this country. I know the African, like you said earlier, we never thought. I grew up here too. We never thought about the history of Africa, including even the history of African American here in this country. You can't even be taught in your own school. In America. And then how do you expect a brother or sister to know about Africa? So many thousand miles away. You can't even know your own history in this country. So the system of the government are teaching you. So I will not judge my brothers and sisters if they don't know about a country that I come from. I will not say that, because I will do an extra mile to explain, to teach about what's going on and what happened. But at the same time, our strengths and our power will show if we know each other and bond together. And we're all, we're all black and African brothers. We're all beautiful. We'll make a miracle. But at the same time, there's a hardship facing not only in Tigray, but half of the continent in Africa. So we need to support and we need to help out each other. But at the same time, there is a hope. There is always hope, just like Mandela was saying. So this is, brother, we're not going to, like I said at the beginning of our conversation, we're not going to finish these things in one day. So we will continue. We'll come back. And of course, you allow me to have this mic. And believe it or not, this is a first time, I think, beside my young age, being out of the public. Usually I'm behind the scene.
That's right. It took a while. You are behind the scenes, and
I'm the behind the scene. I'm the cameraman, technical work, and so Brother Jeff. And after so many years, 29 years, like when you were DJing and KDKO and all that stuff. We have done so many things, but right now I appreciate you, and you are also in the motherland, and you have a family yourself. And this is like we're together. We all. You don't have to have a specific blood family in the continent, but you already have brothers and sisters there that will look up to you. Hey, in America or in other part of the world. So personally, Brother Jeff, I admire what you do. I don't know what to say, because it looks like to me you're. I don't want to exaggerate, but like I feel like you're my twin brother, because I learned a lot. I learned a lot from you, and everything from with our young age until today. So power to you. I know you have you are a voice to your community, to our community, to all of us. To all, we're black, don't have voice, and you've been a very energetic to the community, and I appreciate that, and I commend you, and continue. And then I will support it any way I can, but at the same time, the station is all here for you and to the community. Welcome to you in KTO 93.9 FM. If you're in the Aurora and Denver area, you can tune us on your radio. But if you wanted to do it online, the same thing. Just search for KETO 93.9 FM on your dial. Having said that, Brother Jeff, thank you very much, and hopefully I'll see you
in just a few minutes.
In a few days, or a few minutes, or what have you. I'm here.
Well, I'm looking forward to a coffee ceremony. I'm looking forward to some injera and all of the everything. You know, all of the stuff that we do,
That's right.
the dance. Everybody, if you want to see beautiful people, go to Africa, and then don't get caught up in what the leaders are doing, because we've seen leadership do some very ugly things in the name of people. But if you want to see beautiful people, if you want to see the best people, if you want to see people who will share half of what they have, even if they don't have anything, you're talking about Africa. You're talking about beautiful people all over the continent, perhaps all over the world. But my heart's in Africa and Ethiopia, and so I can tell you, the people are incredible. You want to experience love in a way that you haven't done so. I mean, you've got to do it. So with that being said, if you go down swinging. We will continue sharing these stories, and again, make a donation if you can. We would ask for you to do that. We know where we're going to put those finances. But we're not going to turn our back on Tigray. We're not going to turn our back on Tigray. We're not going to turn our back on Tigray. Stop the genocide. Tell the stories. Share the stories. And if you go down swinging. You just might score a knockout. Rumble, young man, women, and community. Rumble. And as for Africa, like that.
We got it.
like that.